I never imagined I'd be sitting here trying to put this into words, but maybe part of me needs to admit how things really
Oh,
began.
George.
At first, it was simple. He was just someone I felt sorry for, someone who looked so broken after what he'd been through. His long-term partner had betrayed him, leaving him shattered and unable to function like the person I once knew. He carried the kind of pain that shows in someone's eyes, in the way they stop eating properly, the way they stare at nothing for minutes at a time. I had seen it in him, and my only thought was that no one should have to carry that weight alone. I told myself I was only being kind, that it was just about checking on him, offering comfort when he needed it most, and nothing more than that. We started talking more often. At first, it was small things, how his day had gone, whether he managed to eat something, how he was trying to deal with sleepless nights. He seemed grateful for my presence, for the way I would listen without judgment, and I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing. I wasn't doing anything wrong, at least that's what I thought. I convinced myself that being there for him was what any decent person would do. The truth, though, is that I started to feel good about the way he leaned on me, how much he trusted me when he felt like the rest of the world had turned its back. There was a moment when I realized how far his hurt had gone. He told me he didn't feel like he had anyone else, that everyone saw him as weak for not moving on quickly, and he said I was the only one who understood. Hearing that struck something deep inside me, because who doesn't want to feel like they're the one person someone can rely on? I wasn't used to being anyone's anchor, but for him, I suddenly was. Slowly, our conversations grew longer, stretching late into the night, filled with laughter in between the heavy parts. I saw glimpses of the man he used to be before the betrayal, and it made me feel like I was doing something good, like I was helping to pull him back into the light. Looking back, maybe this was where I should have pulled away. Maybe I should have recognized that healing someone isn't always your responsibility, and sometimes closeness carries its own risks. But at the time, all I felt was compassion and a desire to help. I truly thought I was doing the right thing, but life has a way of twisting intentions into something you never expected. What started as a simple attempt to comfort him began to form cracks in my own sense of judgment. I wanted to see him whole again, but I never realized how much being needed could change the way I saw him. It didn't take long before the lines started to blur, even though I told myself they wouldn't. The daily check-ins became something he expected, and without realizing it, I started looking forward to them too. He would text me first thing in the morning just to say he hadn't slept well or that he had dreamed of his ex again, and I would reply, offering comfort and words I thought might keep him steady. I thought I was just being supportive, but there was something about the way he opened up to me that pulled me closer than I ever planned to be. He relied on me in ways that felt deeper than friendship, and instead of stopping it, I let it continue because a part of me liked being needed. He began to compliment me, sometimes in passing, sometimes in ways that carried weight I couldn't ignore. He would say I was the only one who really listened, the only person who made him feel like he wasn't completely broken. The more he said it, the harder it became to dismiss. I felt this warmth every time he admitted how much my presence mattered to him. I knew this wasn't just about support anymore, it was becoming something else, something I wasn't prepared to name out loud. But I didn't pull back. I told myself he was fragile, that pulling away would hurt him more. In reality, I was already caught up in the connection we were building. The nights we talked grew longer, sometimes hours passing without either of us noticing. We would start with serious subjects, his fears, his regrets, his anger at what had been done to him, and somehow end up laughing about small things, trading memories, sharing secrets. I began to notice how easy it was to tell him things I hadn't told anyone else, and it struck me that he had become just as much of a comfort to me as I was to him. That realization should have scared me, but instead it gave me a sense of closeness I hadn't felt in years. I tried to convince myself that as long as nothing physical happened, we weren't crossing any lines. But I knew in my heart that wasn't true. The way we lingered when we said goodbye, the way his hand brushed mine and neither of us pulled away, the way a simple hug lasted a little too long, it all told me we had already crossed an invisible boundary. I felt guilt creeping in, but I buried it under the excuse of being there for him. I told myself he needed me, and in some twisted way, I believed I needed him too. Things shifted the night he looked at me differently, with a softness I couldn't ignore. He didn't have to say anything, I felt it in the silence between us. I should have walked away, but instead, I froze, caught in the weight of that moment. It was the unspoken admission that whatever this was, it had already grown beyond comfort, beyond friendship, and I was no longer just helping him heal. Something was changing, and deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before the line we tiptoed around would finally break. The shift from comfort to something more happened so quickly that by the time I realized it, we were already too far in. One moment, it was a hug meant to reassure him, the next it became something heavier, something that carried all the weight of everything we had been trying to ignore. I remember the silence between us, the way it felt louder than any words we could have said. There was hesitation in my mind, guilt clawing at me, but my body didn't move away. It was as though all those late nights, the whispered secrets, and the unspoken feelings had built to this breaking point, and once it cracked, there was no way to patch it back up. What followed wasn't planned. It wasn't even something I ever thought myself capable of, yet it happened, and the moment it did, everything shifted. There was passion, yes, but there was also something raw, like two people clinging to each other not out of pure desire but out of desperation. He wanted to feel whole again, and I wanted to believe I was giving that to him. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. What we were doing wasn't healing, it was a way to escape the hurt, to numb it with something we both knew couldn't last. In the days after, the secrecy wrapped around us like a fog. We found ways to meet quietly, messages hidden under casual conversations, moments stolen when no one else was looking. It became a cycle of guilt followed by craving, each encounter leaving me torn between wanting to stop and not being able to. I avoided eye contact with people close to me, afraid they'd see right through me, afraid they'd know the truth I was carrying. Yet, when I was with him, none of that mattered. The rush of it drowned out every doubt, at least until I was alone again. He started talking differently, too. He spoke of a future, of possibilities I never intended to promise. I could hear the hope in his voice, but instead of feeling flattered, I felt the weight of it pressing down on me. He wasn't just looking for comfort anymore, he was attaching himself to me in ways I wasn't ready to admit. Every time he said I saved him, I felt the sting of knowing I was also breaking something sacred inside myself. The double life became harder to manage, every text carefully deleted, every excuse rehearsed in my mind. I knew this couldn't go on forever. There was no version of this where we walked away without someone getting hurt. Still, I stayed in it longer than I should have, caught between the guilt of betraying what I valued and the pull of something I couldn't seem to let go. And as much as I tried to convince myself it was temporary, part of me knew that secrets this heavy never stay buried for long. The truth always finds a way to surface, and I was beginning to realize that the fallout would be more than either of us could handle. It couldn't stay hidden, and in the end, it didn't. Secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks, and ours was no exception. The first sign was his change in behavior. He became too open about us, too careless with his words, as though part of him wanted the truth to come out. When people began to notice how often we were together, I felt the shift in the way they looked at me. It didn't take long before questions turned into suspicions, and suspicions eventually became confirmation. Once the truth surfaced, everything unraveled faster than I could have imagined. The fallout was brutal. He felt abandoned all over again when he realized I wasn't ready to give him what he thought this meant. I wasn't going to leave behind the life I had built, and he couldn't understand why. He accused me of using him, of giving him hope only to rip it away. I wanted to scream that I never meant to lead him on, that I was only trying to help him heal, but what could I say when I had crossed a line I swore I never would? His pain doubled, first from the betrayal of his partner, then from mine. And in that moment, I finally saw how deeply I had failed him. For me, the weight of guilt became unbearable. Every glance from people who knew felt like judgment, every conversation carried the possibility of exposure. I lost respect for myself in ways I didn't think possible. The connection that once felt intoxicating now felt poisonous, a reminder of the person I had become in the shadows. I thought I was strong enough to control the situation, but instead I let it control me. There was no romance in the aftermath, no sense of victory. It was just pain layered over pain. In quiet moments, I asked myself whether I had ever truly helped him at all. The answer was clear: I hadn't. I thought I was giving him comfort, but I only deepened his wounds by entangling him in something that had no safe outcome. What he needed was time, space, and honesty, not another complicated relationship built on broken foundations. I see that now, but it's too late. I can't take back the choices I made, and I can't erase the damage they caused. The hardest part is knowing that my intentions started pure. I wanted to ease his suffering, to give him a sense of hope when he had none. Somewhere along the way, though, compassion turned into desire, and desire into betrayal. I became the very thing I swore I was protecting him from, a reminder that trust can be fragile, and sometimes even kindness can carry consequences you never imagined. I wanted to be the one who helped him heal, but in the end, all I left behind was another scar he'll carry forever.